Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. Just be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class. If you've not been watching my videos, I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff, guys. Oh, that's really good. Good evening, everybody. I've always been very careful not to predict a house price crash. I've always said since 2022, I see prices sliding. Fred Harrison is an economist who's been known for something called the 18-year property cycle. This is an article, whether he did an article in the Times, did an article on him about a year ago. And he's always said for years, 2026 would be when house prices crash. And in this video, I'm going to be going through a number of things. Most of all, I'm going to be going through the RICS most recent monthly survey. We're going to get into that and go through all of their graphs so that you can form your own opinion of what you think is going to happen to prices. Let me make one thing really clear straight away. Whatever does happen, hello, Paul, and whatever house prices do, they never move uniformly. So making percentage forecasts is a mug's game. And I know I made my ultimate percentage price drop of 35% from peak to trough over however long it takes, because I'm a mug. I've also always said that a house price crash is not good. Even though I want better affordability, I want lower prices. I want more people to own a home, and I think house prices are too high. I've always said that the best way to achieve that with the minimal damage is for house prices to flatline whilst wages grow, bringing down the ratio between house prices and wages. And that has been happening to an extent, but only when you're measuring gross salary versus house prices. When you actually measure net take-home salary versus house prices, it's still not getting more affordable. This video is also not just for movers, but it is also going out live on the Best Agent channels, because this information is as important for agents as it is for movers. Not only because for your own business, you want to be ahead of the game of what's happening, what's coming down the line, and make up your own opinion, but also for the benefit of your current clients. You need to be getting your head around what this data means. So this is going out to movers and agents alike, in the hope that for those people who need to continue moving, no matter what's happening in the world, you are able to continue moving. And even when there is a house price crash, or even when activity slows, there are still substantial numbers of people moving house. There are still people buying and selling, and there are agents tying up deals. And what matters is that those people who need to move, no matter what's happening, because of life events, death, debt, and divorce being the three largest causes of people moving home. Those things don't stop happening just because there's a downturn in the market or the economy or anything else, right? You need to keep moving. So that is the goal here, to try and help you guys formulate your own opinion on what's happening in the market that concerns you, wherever that might be, whether it's detached house or studio flat, or whether it's north or south or country or rural or town or rural, This hopefully will help you draw your own conclusions as to what to do best. I would love to take your questions on this topic tonight. I'm happy to say right now that the slide in house prices that has been happening since 2022 when they peaked is, in my view, based on all the data I can see and have access to and all the leading indicators, is accelerating based on the conversations I'm having with agents, the work I'm doing with agents on the front line. The market is getting harder for sellers, and buyers have, in some places, some buyers have run for cover, and some agents are reporting that the phones are not ringing, when normally in September you'd be expecting boom times. That September is normally the busiest month of the year in the second half of the year after the summer holidays and before Christmas. And I'm going to begin by playing you a couple of clips of videos that have come out in the last week. The first one of which is Fred Harrison himself. So you can hear 1 minute of Fred in his own words explaining what he thinks is going to happen. This video only came out a week ago. It's already had 350,000 views. I posted it on X. I shared it on YouTube as well. So you maybe already have seen it. I'm just going to play 1 minute of this, right? This video is entitled The Global Collapse of 2026. I think I've linked to it below, but you'll find it easily if I haven't. Let's just see what young Fred has to say for a minute.
Yes, we're talking about a pattern, a cycle that's been going on for hundreds of years, with deviations only if there's a world war. So yes, we can predict the timetable of the current business cycle based on those 18-year periodicities. This current cycle did suffer a traumatic effect, which was the COVID intervention, the pandemic. But what that did was to bring forward the peak in house prices that we would otherwise be experiencing today in 2025 and in 2026.
Remember, 2022 was when I called the top.
So we've banked the increase in house prices during the COVID era, and we're careering towards the end of the cycle with the politicians doing everything they can to make it happen. They are boosting the housing market as best they can because they think that's the way to curry favour with the home buyers. They are adding taxes to burden the workers because they're desperate about not balancing their books. They are deregulating the risks of lending money, so that renders the financial sector even more vulnerable. The forecasting agencies are predicting that growth will continue on till 2029. So the lawmakers have no clue as to what is just about to happen. And that's the trauma that we're now in.
Okay. So that's Fred's take. By the way, that video, he goes on to discuss a lot more than house prices, including at the very end of the video, he talks about AI, and it's a really fascinating perspective on AI that I haven't heard anyone else say. It's really interesting. Now, the next video I want to play you is a short clip of Sir Stuart Rose. I think it's Stuart Rose. The ex-boss of Marks and Spencer's and Asda, who was interviewed on Times Radio 2 days ago. And I want you to hear what he says. Just a very, very short clip of what he says, and then what the next person says about the current situation in the UK.
We're not travelling anywhere. We're actually standing still in a lay-by while we decide what to do. That's the real problem. The Britain is stuck here for the next 3 months, waiting with real anxiety to see what will happen about the next level of taxation that will come through, which will burden business and actually will not encourage growth.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe's energy empire has stopped investing in the UK. Ineos Energy says it will focus on the United States instead because Britain has become, quote, one of the most unstable fiscal regimes in the world. It's another example of Labour's problems with the global business elite. The French Prime Minister even used the UK as a warning to his own MPs, saying that tax on the rich in Britain has pushed billionaires out. He said that had led to a bulge in the Milan property markets. Well,
Okay. So what Stuart Rose was talking about was the fact that now the announcement of the budget being late means that we're in a lay-by. The whole economy is on hold. And that's, in a way, what's happening to the housing market. I'm not suggesting that the housing market has gone on hold. It hasn't gone on hold at all. But a lot of people who would normally be looking at moving, thinking of moving out their viewing, a lot of people have put the brakes on. And let me just share. It's interesting. So this is a graph from the article that Fred Harrison did for the Times a year ago. And he says that this 18-year property cycle, with the exception of global world wars, this is what always happens. And looking at this one here, it's really interesting, I think. Okay, I'm just going to change that just so we know it's Moving Home with Charlie and Best Agent tonight. So look at that graph, right? So if we take 2008 as the last, so where that graph starts, from 2008 for 7 years, so until 2015, we did have strong house price growth, didn't we? And then in the next 7 years, it faltered for a bit, then it's kept going up, and then leading up to 4 years ago, 2021, 22, was the pandemic when it peaked. And it peaked in 2022. And then there's 4 years of it coming down and then flatlining for a bit. And so that's what Fred how he explains it. Now, I've had a question here from someone on X who's straight underneath where I posted that I'd be talking this evening about a live stream because negative house price movement accelerates for the 3rd month in a row, according to the RICS. And William Edwards, or Claret Badger, what a great name, on X says, having sold my flat in South London in March, well done, congratulations, I'm desperate to find a new place. I guess, however, your advice would be to hold off. And this is a question I get asked a lot, especially by new followers, and especially if you say, as Claret Badger does say, that you're desperate to find a new place, especially if that's the case. But for anyone who wants to find a new home because you want to have a new home, my advice is never stop looking. Because in fact, right now, when a lot of buyers do stop looking, is when you're most likely to bag a bargain, an absolute steal. Now, you've got to offer on somewhere between 10 and 20 flats before you bag your bargain. You've got to be prepared to go that far. You've got to be looking at stuff that looks like it's out of your price range, but it's been on the market a long time. And the seller is looking at the news and everything else in the economy and going, oh my God, we're desperate to sell. You never know which one it is, but you put your offer in where you say to yourself, for that flat, in this market, I would offer this much, even knowing what might be happening to house prices next year. Because if you're planning to buy somewhere and stay 5 or more years, what do you care if having a home to live in is your top priority? What do you care if house prices come down a bit next year? Now, nobody wants to lose 35% of their house purchase price, and a lot of people who bought at the peak of that graph in 2022, when I was saying we're at the peak, and who overpaid, are now repenting at leisure, as I say. But as a buyer, if you're buying a home to live in long term, right now is a great time to be out there, because agents are going to be much more receptive to viewing inquiries, because they're not getting as many as they would like at this time of year. Sellers are going to be much keener to consider offers. And while there are plenty of sellers who are not able to drop their price far enough to meet the market, you only need one. You, as a buyer, only need one, right? So always buy, just don't overpay, as long as it's buying a home you want to stay in long term. Now, if you said to me, Charlie, we want to buy now, but we're expected to sell within 5 years, I would say, if you're buying in a market like, for example, Belfast, Northern Ireland, or somewhere else where you know that the kind of property you're buying is always going to be in particular demand, even if the rest of the market comes down, and you're quite well insulated against a loss because you've got a large amount of cash deposit, and you don't mind taking a bit of a haircut on the value of the home because you've got a home to live in for 5 years, and you're going to lose less than renting would cost you, then okay. But if you're talking about using a large loan to value mortgage to buy a home, and you're buying a new home or something that's overpriced already, and you're planning to move within 5 years, you're going to be in real trouble in this market, in my opinion. And what you need to do is, if you still want to buy, is you just need to be incredibly careful to make sure that you buy extremely well, right? You need to make sure you've got yourself a real bargain if you want to sell within 5 years without losing too much money. Now, listen, hey, if I'm wrong and house prices go to the moon, because everyone seems to think that's going to happen no matter what, great, happy days. You bought a bargain, you're going to make money on it, right? But if you're buying to live in a home, just keep going, keep moving. Now, let's go and look at, so do I have any questions on this so far? Fred looks like Doc from Back to the Future. Rubabinho says, we need 110% mortgages back with Help to Buy. I'm aware that is irony, and you're being sarcastic there. John Averill says, it's all very old guys today. Thank you very much. And John asks a question. If I wait another year, that's 15k in rent. Will it drop significantly more than that? Well, that depends entirely on what you're buying and where you're buying it. If you're talking at the larger end of the market, the detached houses, yes, it will drop significantly more than that, I think. But if you're paying 15k in rent, that says to me you're renting a smaller place somewhere. I don't know. But again, John, it's about the move, not the money. Right? Don't get too obsessed about 1,000 quid here or 1,000 quid there difference in it. Like, that is distraction from the job of actually moving home and living where you want to live. No, sorry, Jay. Jay says, the only thing that's a bit different, I think, is that there aren't enough homes. Yes, there are. There are more than enough homes. This is a myth perpetuated by people who want to sell new houses and mortgages. There are more than enough homes. Are there some places where there aren't enough homes? Yes. Are there some places where there are acute housing shortages? Yes. Is there nationally a housing shortage? No. There are 1.3 or 1.5 million long-term officially vacant homes. There are, I think, 700,000 homes on the market at the moment, not sold. There are new homes that aren't sold. There is no housing shortage. It's a myth. And when we get into the RICS survey results in a minute, you'll see some of the data on there which backs this up, right? If you live somewhere where there's genuinely a shortage of housing, okay, I'm not saying that there aren't places where there is a shortage. Of course there are some, but as a country, there isn't an overall shortage. Okay, John, so you're asking about whether to wait because a year's rent is 15 grand. Again, your question presumes that all prices will fall in unison at exactly the same amount. And if you were to overpay on a £550,000 house now, there is a reasonable chance that it would lose more than 15 grand in the next 12 months. There is, depending, I don't know where you're in the country, that kind of stuff, right? But if you were to go out and bag a bargain and go out there and negotiate hard and find that seller in the right situation on a house that you want, and you get it for, what other people might pay 550 for, you end up paying 500 for because it's not selling. It's not just about the money, especially if you're living long term, right? It's about, do you want to live in that house? And frankly, is the net difference between one option or the other going to be enough to change your mind? Paul says, Charlie, if we get 35% nominal average drops, whose face are you going to rub into it first? Probably Russell Quirk, I reckon. Probably Russell Quirk. Good friend of mine. I really enjoyed doing that to him. Right, let's go into, and I'm going to get into this deep. Right, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of this RICS report, because I think that if you read between the lines, there's a lot to unpack here. A lot to unpack. Right, so this is the UK Residential Market Survey by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors for August 2025. Now, the first thing you need to know about this is that they published this a couple of days ago, but the survey questions were asked about a month ago. Bear that in mind, because when this survey was taken, they hadn't started teasing all the property tax increases for the budget. So this is before that hit the market. And I'm gonna interpret this for you. I have never seen a shorter headline, right? Normally that's 2 to 3 lines there. That's not even one line. That's just over half a line. Sales market activity continues to slow. That's almost the most negative language I've ever heard them speak in. They're just not even trying to hide it now. Yeah, it's sales activity was already bad and it's getting worse, and we're not even going to try to finesse that. And it's no surprise, but this didn't get much coverage when it came out in the news the other day. I think it's because it was when Angela Rayner was hogging the headlines. So 3 things here: new buyer inquiries fall for a second straight month, right, at a time of year when you're expecting them to go up. A decline in agreed sales also reported. And house prices drift. I love it. That's like the softening word, isn't it? House prices drift lower at the aggregate level. I'm glad they said that at the aggregate level. That's the overall average, okay? But it's amazing the language they use. When house prices are coming down, they're softening. Note that they don't say that they're hardening when they go up, but they are softening if they come down. And when they're going lower, they're drifting lower. The opposite of which would be floating higher, but they don't say that either, do they? It's always gently drifting lower. And sentiment on the near-term outlook remains cautious. Well, that is, I think, a generous way of describing it. Now, I find a lot of the content in here pretty striking. The feedback in this survey signals a continued slowdown in sales market activity, right? We're not talking about prices yet, but activity. And the reason this is a problem is because it makes moving house harder. With most parts of the UK now seeing a decline in the volume of new buyer inquiries coming through. Moreover, forward-looking sentiments point to this subdued backdrop remaining in place over the coming months, right? So in other words, they don't see it getting better anytime soon. While the consensus view amongst the respondents, who are, by the way, estate agents who are members of the RICS, the consensus view among respondents for the years ahead has turned largely flat. So they're saying for a year out, they're looking at just being flat for a year. Looking at the new buyer inquiries indicator, the August net balance of minus 17% marks a further deterioration compared to the reading of minus 7% a month earlier. A month earlier is the wording I would use, but they say returned in the previous iteration of the survey. That's the longest way of saying last month that I've ever heard. As such, this measure suggests that the fall in buyer demand gathered impetus over the month. So it's an accelerating fall in buyer demand, with most parts of the UK now seeing a negative trend emerge. It's worth pointing out at this point, right, that the RICS survey is really interesting because they don't measure actual prices, they measure sentiment. And yet, when you look at the graphs of the RICS survey and plot it with the time lag cancelled out over land registry house prices, it's the most accurate of all of them. So this is a leading indicator. Remember this, right? This is a survey of agents on the front line. It's what's happening now or what was happening a few weeks ago. So compare that with what the land registry reports this month is what was happening at the front line about 5 or 6 months ago. So the indications we're getting from this are 5 or 6 months at least ahead of what we get from the land registry. Right. In parallel to this, agreed sales also appeared to fall at a sharper rate than reported last month. Oh, not the previous iteration of the, just last month. Evidenced by the net balance slipping to minus 24% from minus 17% beforehand. So that's saying that last month it was a negative 17% balance reporting sales falls, as in transaction volumes falling. Looking ahead, it's anticipated to remain broadly flat. So their anticipation is they're just guessing. They're just guessing. And when we look at the graphs later, you'll see that their projections are always optimistic, significantly more optimistic than what's happening now. Their own graphs show that to be the case. Right. What's more, respondents now foresee a largely stagnant picture at the 12-month time horizon. Okay, that's not a big deal. They're just guessing. But normally, what's notable here is that normally 12 months out, they're always really positive. And this is unusual for it to be not positive. And so the latest net balances metric dipped to just 1%. So basically flat, representing the least positive yearly reading since October 2023. Now, if you remember, October 2023, when was the mini budget? Was that 22 or 23? I can't remember. Never mind. Now, what's also interesting is turning to supply, the new vendor instructions series posted a net balance of minus 3% in August. So slightly fewer instructions coming to market than expected in that month, which is that is a change, right? Because new properties coming to market has been high. In fact, the latest reading represents the first occasion since June 24, so just over a year ago, that this measure has been below zero. Okay. And therefore no longer pointed to some degree of uplift in new instructions. But don't forget, we've got a big glut of unsold stuff on the market. Similarly, the net balance for market appraisals slipped to minus 7%, signaling that on average, respondents are seeing a slightly weaker trend compared to a year ago. All right, that's people asking for their houses to be valued. Now, here we get into house prices. On the back of recent weakness in new buyer demand, house prices are reportedly coming under a small degree of downward pressure at the national level. Right, so they're saying that the national average. Okay. Indeed, the headline house price gauge produced a net balance reading of minus 19% this month. And last month it was minus 13%, and the month before it was minus 7%. So those negative balance readings mean that more surveyors were seeing house prices fall than were seeing house prices rise. 7% more were seeing them fall than seeing them rise 3 months ago. 2 months ago, 13% more agents were seeing house prices fall than were seeing them rise. And in the most recent reading, it's increased to 19% more agents are seeing house prices fall than are seeing house prices rise. This is not a percentage change in house price. But look at this for regional. So that's national, right? But within the regional, respondents based across East Anglia and the southwest of England are citing minus 64% and minus 46%. So that's 64% more agents are seeing house price falls in the southwest than are seeing house prices rise. But Northern Ireland, they're seeing the opposite. It's going up. Firmly upward trajectory in Northern Ireland still. Going forward, and this is interesting because it's unusual. Respondents see house prices continuing to edge down at the aggregate level. That's the national level, right? Over the coming 3 months, as implied by a net balance reading of minus 20% for August. Okay, now this is also a very noticeable thing in the lettings market. Okay, the net balance reading of tenant demand is 5%, which is a minimal change over the last month, but it shows that it's fairly, tenant demand for lettings is fairly flat. But at the same time, landlord instructions, so that's people putting flats to rent on the market, fell according to a net balance of 37% of respondents, minus 37% of respondents. This is the most negative reading since the pandemic with regards to rental prices. And a net balance of, so 27% more agents are seeing rents going up than are going down over the coming 3 months. And looking ahead to the next 12 months, respondents are penciling in roughly 3% growth in rent at the national level. Right. Before I get into the graphs, I want to make sure I've okay, you're all just having good old-fashioned banter in the a couple of questions that I will flag and come back to in a minute. Interesting questions. Yeah, and we'll talk about, I'll just touch on the budget in a minute, but let's get into some of the graphs on here because they are quite interesting. And by the way, there's a link to this report in the description below the video if you want to download it yourself. It's a PDF. It's not a link to a web page. It's a download link, so it won't open a web page. It'll just download the PDF for you. Right. Okay. I'm not going to get into the regional breakdowns here, but because you can do that yourselves. But nationally, so we've got nationally that purple line on the left-hand graph here. Let's just actually get the graph as big as we can so there's no confusion. That big spike there is the pandemic, but otherwise, if you look at the prices of the last 3 months, going back to 2013, it's weird. There's a sort of slow, long downward trend, but we are now back at the lowest in terms of price reports from the last 3 months. So prices are falling nationally if you average out all of these readings in more places than they are rising at the fastest level going back to 2023 after those initial drops. There's a regional breakdown there which just shows that everywhere except for the north and the northwest, everywhere in England and Wales, except for the north and northwest, saw price drops. Scotland and Northern Ireland saw prices going up. Okay. New buyer inquiries. Okay, they actually be falling. They got just above zero last month, but they're now back down and falling. Okay, so buyer inquiries falling. And there's the regional bar graph. So the only place in the country where there was an increase in buyer inquiries was the Northwest and Northern Ireland. Everywhere else saw either zero or a fall. So new vendor instructions, there's no big movements here, but it has just fallen below zero for the first time. It's a very, very spiky graph that. There's not a big thing to read into that other than the market's getting quieter. It doesn't mean the amount of property on the market has got less, because it hasn't. In fact, I'm going to get the best agent data up there to show that. In a moment. Yeah. And then again, that's the regional breakdown there. There's nothing of note there. Some places are higher, some places are lower, but nothing's very, very big, except the East Midlands. There's a real lack of property coming on the market in the East Midlands. Right. Agreed sales. So this is how many property sales are being agreed, and that's trending negative. That's bad for everybody, agents and movers alike, because it means it's harder to move house, it's harder to get deals done on average. And look at that. Every region except for Northern Ireland is saying that the number of newly agreed sales in the past month had a negative balance. So more agents seeing a fall than seeing a rise in deals agreed. Price expectations. Here we are. This is where what I showed you about what I said earlier about them being over optimistic. So since 2012, that dotted blue line is their 12-month price expectations versus the 3-month expectations of the solid purple line. And it's been way up, like way up. They're so over optimistic on prices. Honestly, guys, I need to tell you about something that happened today to me, because the amount of false optimism that is baked and hardwired into this industry's head is astounding, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of what's happening. I've never seen such stubbornness as just, no, you just have to keep talking positive no matter what happens. That's what you have to do, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. You go, no, everything's fine, it's going to be fine. And there you have it, right there, evidenced. They're always over optimistic. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being hopeful. We hope that a year from now things will be better. But price expectations in the next 3 months regionally, down everywhere except for the Northwest, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and flat in the North and the East Midlands. It really surprises me that London isn't showing a lower price expectation. But London, again, is one of the most over-optimistic places when it comes to agents. That graph is sales volume expectations, 3 and 12 months. Again, it's just trending down there, which is not good news for anybody. And regional sales expectations the next 3 months. So a lot of positivity and optimism here from Northern Ireland, Scotland, East Midlands, and the Northwest, and a bit from the North, and London. Expecting, I cannot understand. Yes, I can actually, because this was taken in August. So that London reading, that's a positive reading for volume of sales, was taken in August, and they're thinking, right, we're going to have September, October, November. We're going to see some more deals happening because it's the autumn. It's the busy autumn period leading up to Christmas. Well, I think this was done just before all the budget teasing was done, and I'm not sure that's going to happen, sadly. Right. Okay. The other place worth looking at on here is so page 4 explains the methodology. So if you want to get into exactly how it works, you can do that. The lettings market charts. So I find that tenant demand going back to it peaked in the pandemic, and look at that downward trend since 2021 over the last 4 years. It's just trending downwards, demand for tenants. Now, that is despite the population increasing. So how can tenant demand be going down when the population is increasing? I hear you say, well, it's because there are fewer, because of the economy going down, because of earnings and wages going down, and people having their belt tightened by losing jobs or not getting wage raises, or inflation costing them more. The cost of living is higher, right? And when fewer people got more money, some people who might have been enjoying living alone, for example, are now having to move in and share. Some people are having to move out of their flat, move back in with their parents. All those sorts of things are happening that are reducing the demand on the housing stock. And thank God, because if that wasn't happening, rents would have been going up even higher. And that's a regional breakdown again. Now, this is new instructions in the past 3 months, and you can see that trending down. It's been negative going back to 2016. Now, funny enough, 2016 was when the government first brought in the first laws that started financially disadvantaging agents and increasing the risk and reducing their returns. And so that's why you can see that long-term sliding trend downward, downward, downward in terms of new instructions, new rental properties coming to the market. Recorded every 3 months. It's like a trailing 3-month figure, right? And that's a monthly series. And new instructions regionally in the past 3 months, down everywhere except for the north. And very heavily down in Scotland, the southwest, the East Midlands and West Midlands, but down everywhere else as well. And then we have rent prices. National rent expectations in the next 3 months are still 30% positive readout. So you've got rents going up as stock is going down. And the stock levels going down are because of the way landlords are being motivated to exit. And they're being motivated to exit on the back of policies and lobbying from tenant lobby groups who want fairer deals for tenants, fairer deals for tenants. And even though there's now overwhelming evidence that their policies are backfiring and causing higher rents, if we can't get our way with the lobby, the policies that we've had now, if those backfire, well, then let's just put rent caps on. Let's just put rent caps on. That'll make it even worse. It doesn't work. You utter monkeys. It doesn't work. Right, and down the bottom here in pages 10 and 11, you get the regional surveyors giving local commentary on their market. It's worth having a look. All righty. Who do we have here? Let's get some questions going. You guys are funny. Good questions. I'm going to find all the questions. I'm going to answer as many as I can. Will we get an economic boom soon? Forgive me, guys, while I just check the questions and we'll start answering some. That's an interesting question from Bruce. I'll get to that question. Very interesting question. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right. Let's get through these questions. Here we go. Naida Afzal says it's not easy to get appointments with agents. That will be down to how well you're qualifying yourself. So I mean, there are some very, very, very thick agents who won't turn away, who will turn away even good qualified buyers. But you need to somehow show that you really are a proceedable buyer, because agents are very, very sensitive to having their time wasted by people they think might waste their time. So you've got to make sure that they know that you're not going to be a time waster. Jason has a question on shared ownership. Shared ownership resale property. Does the seller have to get an RICS survey done to ascertain property value before they advertise it for sale? That's a good question. And Jason, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so. But the agent would know. I don't think so. I can see why you're asking that, because if it's shared ownership, there's more than one person's interest in what happens. But to my knowledge, no. Because again, you can't even value things anyway, right? You can do a valuation. That doesn't mean someone's going to pay it. BozBoz47 says, with the introduction of property taxes imminent, could we soon be in a situation where properties take on a negative value, meaning you have to pay someone to take it off your hands? Well, I mean, if it had a negative value, then that means the government would be paying you tax, wouldn't it, under these new taxes? Because the tax is based on the value of the property. So if it's a negative value, the government would pay you to live there. Interesting question, though. Ramble and Root, hi there. Is it legal to list a house for sale on an estate agent website and at the same time be an auction site lower? There's nothing illegal about that, to my knowledge. But if it's on an auction site lower, I mean, I'm assuming that you're already struggling to sell it. You know, there's no point in having it on the agent's site lower, because you're going to get fewer inquiries. Sorry, there's no point having it higher on the estate agent's site, because you're just not going to get the inquiries. Put it on at the same price in the agent's window, and you'll get more viewings and might sell it before it goes to auction. Next question from Bruce, very interesting. Bruce on YouTube says, we have inherited a large house in Southwest. Would it be safe to say rent rather than sell? Well, Bruce, that depends entirely on what you want from it, right? If I'm assuming you don't want to live in it, because you're saying sell or rent. If it's a large house in the Southwest, they have been amongst the hardest hit in the country on falling prices. So you can do both. You can put it on the market for both, right? You can put it on the market for sale and or to let. And if it's a large house, so that there are agents who will happily help you do that. I wouldn't want to be the landlord of a large house, because large houses have large maintenance bills, and large houses are great value to rent for tenants. So the return on your capital isn't going to be that great, and you're going to have maintenance expenses. The other thing is that with the changes coming in with the Renters' Rights Bill, your risks as a landlord also go up. So if you just want your money out of it, just take the hit on whatever the market's paying, get your money out and move on with your money. So so my answer to your question is, if I'm right that you're just saying what's best from a financial point of view to do with that large house, I can't tell you what to do, but what I would do is I would go to an agent and say, sell it. As in, don't give me a valuation. I don't care what you're going to guess it is. Please just put it on the market at a price that you know is going to get competing bidders. Let's get competing bidders so we know we've got the best price, and let's just get it sold, get my money out. That's what I would do. Everything else is going to be hassle. That's what I would do. I'm not saying it's what you should do, but hopefully it's a helpful answer that you can figure out for yourself what you want to do. Optimus J says, I have a Rightmove group with 29 properties in it. Only 4 have sold. 2 have been pulled off the market. The group was started a month ago. I've added 4 properties today which had previously sold. So they've fallen through, you mean? It seems that properties sold at the beginning of the summer are coming back to the market. Fall throughs everywhere. So that's, again, I wanted to come on to this about no. Is there going to be a house price crash in 2026? Let's look at the things that we know. We know that from Rightmove's asking price index, that asking prices have flatlined year on year. The average asking price of new houses coming to the market compared to a year ago are basically flatlined. That never happens. We also know from other data that came out just today or yesterday, I think it was Hamptons put it out, that the gap between asking prices and sold prices has got bigger. So asking prices are yearly growth in asking prices is as low as it's been for a long time. Rightmove tells us that. That's an advanced leading indicator of a weakening market in terms of price. We then have the RICS today telling us that the market activity is falling, buyer inquiries are falling, prices are falling. They've been falling for 3 months, and that rate of falling is accelerating. We then know that we've got a budget coming up with a very high probability of new property taxes. And the uncertainty of that is causing the market to go into a sort of slowdown. And by the way, I've got a survey I did this evening. I've got a WhatsApp group full of estate agents. And I did a survey, and 90% of them have said that the impact on, since they announced the budget measures, the potential budget measures, 90% have said that it's overall noticeably quieter, but not too bad. And 10% of them have said there's a real impact, current pipeline affected. Now factor into that agents' over-optimism and make of it what you will. Thanks to you guys if you actually voted on that. That's helpful. But Charlie, maybe they'll do things in the budget that's going to pump house prices back up. Well, we've had 4 rate cuts in a row. We're down to 4% now, I think, from memory. From 5.25, we're down to 4%. Is that right? I can't remember. Something like that. That hasn't helped the market, has it? Hasn't helped the market. It hasn't helped prices. We've seen Savills and Rightmove and Zoopla and one other house price forecaster slash their 2025 house price forecast to 1%. They've all said 1% national house price growth. It won't be 1% at the end of it. It's going to be, prices will have fallen, I'm pretty sure. And from the agents I'm talking to, anecdotally at the front lines, their buyer interest, the buyer interest that is there is very, very weak on pricing, right? There are not high bids being. Yes, property that comes to market, and in fact, with the agent I'm working with, they are selling everything in 3 weeks. Why? Because they are bringing it to the market and letting the market decide the price. And the sellers are going, we want to sell. As long as you've got the market price, we're selling. We're out of here. Okay? And so that's what you should do if you're a seller. So one of you booked a video call with me to say you'd had your house on the market in London for a year with an agent that had overvalued it by about 30%. And then you went with a second agent, you reduced the price. And now you're like, I just want to sell it. What's happening? And you've spoken to, and if you're watching this, you know who you are because you've messaged me today. And you sent me a message saying, I've been talking to agents about coming to the market with a lower asking price in order to stimulate interest. And the agents seem bemused. Let me read this out. Okay. I spoke to the agent, but they were not familiar with your strategy or process and seemed bemused at my attempts to explain it. They went to see the property and came back with a standard valuation, slightly lower than the current asking price, which would in effect be continuing to chase the market down and all the usual guff. So my question to you, Charlie, is can you recommend an agent in that area that is familiar with your process and in whom I can have confidence will deliver accordingly? And I have to tear my hair out because as a really good agent will know, when you have a seller that comes to you and says, I've been on with 2 other agents, I need to sell and I want to price it low to get lots of interest. And those agents are going, we don't understand. We don't understand. I just despair. Here I am, agents, helping you by bringing you sellers with realistic expectations who are ready to sell. They're ready to do everything to sell quickly. They're ready to be sale ready with a conveyancer instructor. They're not going to overprice. They are literally a golden seller for you to do your job and make a fee. And you are literally scaring them away with your over-optimism. Oh, no, we just put a high price on. That's all we know how to do. I can't believe how many agents there are that literally don't know any other way, that you just put up a high price and you cross your fingers and hope to get viewings. Even when the seller comes in and goes, I don't want to do that, lower price, get more people in. And they're like, no, that's not how we work. I mean, honestly, I don't understand how agents that thick can be in business. There we go. You try and help people. And this is through the Best Agent website, right? This is trying to find agents with the best. I cannot vouch for individual agents through the Best Agent website. I am working on the project. The reason I'm working with Carringtons in London, the reason I'm working with other agents soon as well, I'm working towards creating a transparency status that any agent that volunteers to bring their transparency to the market will get a transparency badge on Best Agent and therefore be more likely to be chosen by sensible sellers. I am working on doing that, trying to help solve this problem where sensible sellers are going, I'm just trying to find a good agent that isn't just spouting the same old scripted nonsense at me, and I can't find one. I mean, there are literally about 1 in 10 agents who are actually really good and know how to make a market for property and sell it. And it can be very hard to find them. And you don't want to have to talk to 10 agents to find one, do you? I get it. That's what I'm working on a Best Agent. And we will get there. And it does work. And there are people getting agents and having a better outcome as a result. But sometimes, like today, geez, you think you're helping people. Do we have any more? So, no, I'm still talking about 2026, aren't I? To me, with my 30 years experience in this industry, as with many different hats on, every single indicator is weakening economy, weakening jobs, weakening demand, and the outlook for jobs is worse because of AI. And because they're going to be putting taxes up at the next budget. That's going to hurt the economy further because Labour have never turned an economy around in history. Did you know that? The Labour government has never turned an economy around from a falling one into a rising one. They just put their foot on the head of the drowning economy and speed it up every time. And they're doing it again. And for all of these reasons, including the growing number of people being in a forced to sell position, the chances of Fred Harrison's prediction of a crash in 2026 being correct are very high. I mean, they're better than 50%, I think. Now, there are other factors that affect it, like global politics, global economics, bond markets, all that kind of stuff, war, assassinations. There are all of these things that can affect it. The EU collapsing in and of itself, Ursula von der Leyen being booted out, I think is happening. All of these things are shaking markets, and there are lots of things looking very, very shaky. There are lots of hedge fund billionaire investors warning that things are about to all go south. And maybe they are, maybe they're not. It feels very, very like something bad is going to happen. And if you watch that Fred Harrison video, he explains exactly why he thinks that's exactly what's going to happen. So I'm expecting my slide, and I know some of you have had really good fun going, hey, Charlie, it's 2025. Are we at 35% down yet? My exact words, if you want to go back to the videos, were 35% peak to trough over however long it takes. I didn't say over 3 years. I said over however long it takes. Peak to trough over however long it takes. And I guess we're probably about 3 years. I didn't say it will hit the bottom in 3 years. And we are nowhere near the bottom. And everything is working against a functioning housing market at the moment. Everything's working against estate agents. It's working against sellers. And the economy is spooking the buyers and the government. And Rachel Reeves are spooking buyers even more with their, hey, maybe we're going to bring in all these taxes. But anyway, there we go, guys. Right, I've been going for an hour. I'm going to knock on the head for the day. Do we have any last minute questions? Toby says, okay, there's a few questions here. They're all quite quick ones to answer. Let me just we've got one of the price pumpers in the comments there, Louis Marion. Price pumper. Prices will be up 25%. Up. It only goes up. We don't understand anything other than house prices going up. It's all that happens. They won't let them fall. Give me some more Kool-Aid. House price Kool-Aid. They're just going to keep going up. Up. Ever, forever. Yeah, sorry. I'm just going through more questions here. Yeah, the rate cuts won't help the market. Correct. Yeah. The Renters' Rights Bill. That's the other thing. The Renters' Rights Bill. I mean, that's got to be one of the worst things the government's ever done. It's not that there aren't improvements needed in the rental market. There are. There are improvements needed for tenant protections in certain instances. There is protection needed against really bad landlords. There's also protection needed against bad tenants. And what's happening, as every single time whenever the government intervenes in an industry, like the car industry, how much is the car industry enjoying the government intervention recently? Fucking idiots. Governments, just keep us safe and let us get on with everything. Don't come in and start telling commercial markets what customers must buy or not buy. Don't do that. It never, ever works. It always just kills industries. And the Renters' Rights Bill, because of how badly it's been thought through, it's been rushed. Labour are trying to rush it through to get a win on the board, and it's going to cause absolute nightmares. Absolute nightmares. And unless I was a landlord, a professional landlord with a lot of experience, with really, really good long-term tenants in my properties, I would be out. I would be just getting out. Loads of questions. Yeah, that's another. Okay, I'm just about to run through all these questions. Okay, I will answer all of these questions. That's also true, Boz. Infinite gaslighting. Okay. So, should we wait for the budget if upsizing? Asks Nick Jones. No. Be out there looking. I mean, if you haven't already found someone who offered on it, you're not going to have. You're unlikely to be bought before the budget anyway. But no, if you're upsizing, be a great time. So I'm assuming you're selling and buying. There is absolutely no benefit to you waiting for the budget whatsoever. You just want to follow all the traditional rules, sell intelligently, bring it to the market, well presented, get lots of viewers through the door, create a market, get an offer, nice, solid, bankable offer with which you can then go and bid on the house you're upsizing to, for which there should be lots of choice and easier opportunities to bag a bargain, get it over the line. No benefit I can see in waiting. Toby says, what's your best guess about new taxes? Well, I have read a document, which I thought I had a copy of here. Yeah, I do. This is what I think is going to happen. I will just put in the live stream, in the live chat, a link to this document, because it's written by a guy who's been advising the government for 20 years, and it's quite obvious that they're just asking him what to do, and they're going to do it. So right here, there's a link to it. It's a PDF. That, I think, is the safest bet as to the most likely outcome from the budget. Okay. Search for it, right? ukonward.com is the website where you'll find it. I'll put it on the screen for a second. A fairer property tax, it's called. And in a nutshell, it's talking about scrapping stamp duty below £500,000, adding property tax, annual property taxes at different rates for different bands of properties. And if you can't afford to pay it, the property tax accrues every year, but you only have to pay it when you sell. These are just suggestions, but I reckon that what's in that document is the best prediction or likelihood of what's going to happen. That's what I think. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to affect. So, Toby, if you're a first-time buyer at below £325,000, which in most of the country is most first-time buyers, it's not going to affect you either way, right? So, genuinely, if you are buying or selling at under £325,000, buying or selling a home less than £325,000, it's not going to affect you. Stamp duty, if they do scrap it below £500,000, that will improve activity in the market. That'll be good. And some people are going to say, oh, it's going to make property prices go up. No, it's not. Because it won't improve people's multiples of what they can borrow. It might mean that people have a slightly better deposit, that's all. John Averill says, why do so many sellers not try to renew leases when selling? I've seen so many places with 90 years and under, and it puts me off, and no doubt other buyers off. Shouldn't put you off. It's an opportunity for you. As long as it's over 85 years, you can still get a mortgage. And as long as you can find out that it's always possible to extend a lease. It's a great opportunity if they don't want to do it. I mean, you're right. It would be better for them if they did do it, but it would just mean you'd be paying more. So I think it's an opportunity, not a problem. John Parnell says, one of my friends who is a long-term 3-property buy-to-let landlord is now selling up because he fears the worst from the forthcoming renters' rights bill and November's budget. Yep. Now, this is not a bad thing. Let me tell you the good and the bad, the two-edged sword of this, right? Landlords selling up means one of 3 things. Another landlord buys it and it remains a rental property. So the net effect on the rental market is 0. A first-time buyer buys it and it's removed from rental stock, but that first-time buyer is also removed as a tenant. So you've removed 1 unit of supply, the property, and you've also removed 1 unit of demand, assuming that first-time buyer was in rented. So that's neutral, right? So if a landlord buys it, it's neutral. If a first-time buyer who was a tenant buys it, it's also neutral, and someone's got it. So that's good. The third option, though, is that it gets sold to someone who's living with their parents. And in that scenario, they weren't a tenant. They're now buying what was a tenanted property. That reduces the supply, the rental supply in the area by 1 unit when that happens. None of those are a problem. Everything's fine with that. Except when the landlord who is being forced to sell by government policies evicts their no-fault tenants who cannot find a new home and end up having to be housed at the taxpayers' expense, and that family's put into limbo, and those kids suddenly don't have a home. They have a place to sleep, but it's not a home, right? Lives are being ruined by these policies in large record numbers. No one's talking about it. And the tenant lobby groups who are screaming to get rid of the landlords are directly causing this homelessness to go up, and they won't fucking acknowledge it, and it boils my fucking blood. The government data itself cites landlords selling up as the number one cause of these families being forced into temporary accommodation. It's in black and white. Journalists won't report on it. The lobby groups don't acknowledge it. No one talks about it. It's completely avoidable. No one talks about it. Why? Because the government doesn't want to be blamed for causing this avoidable homelessness, but it is. And Shelter, the charity that is supposed to help homeless people, is the number one culprit of these policies, having lobbied for them 10 years ago successfully. All right. So this is why I get angry about the hounding of landlords out, okay? Because it is causing a spike of record homelessness. This is not a matter of opinion. It's not up for debate. It's cold, hard, brutal, verifiable fact that landlords selling up is causing the biggest spike in homelessness and families being pushed into temporary accommodation of anything. Nobody fucking talks about it. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. It boils my blood. And the campaigners for rent caps and all this anti-landlord campaigning, you have those families' failed futures on your hands. And honestly, frankly, fuck you for ignoring it and ignoring the consequences of your lobbying. Cup of tea. I do get carried away about this, don't I? Fraggle H says, that's why I like you, Charlie. You make me feel optimistic. Yeah, I'm so positive, aren't I? Anna Honey, hello there, on YouTube says, is there a way to tell how many buyers are also sellers in the UK market? We seem to talk about them as separate entities, but I feel that it must be a large percentage who need to sell to move. You're correct, it is. Roughly speaking, broadly, 1/3 of all buyers are also sellers. First-time buyers who don't have anything to sell made up 54% of transactions last year. Okay, so less than half, somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of buyers are also sellers. John Smith asks, where are we, Charlie? Halfway? I think you're talking about how far down the slide, right? How far down the slide / crash? It depends. It depends what part of the country you're in. It depends what kind of property you're talking about. Are we talking about houses or flats, leasehold or freehold? But big, fat, overall generalization. If it's an S-shaped slide, yeah, roughly speaking, halfway. Yeah, there's going to be no meaningful house price growth in the foreseeable future, the next 3 to 5 years, none that I can see. And Richard Donald at Zupa agrees on that. In fact, no one seems to dispute that. And in real terms, house prices are continuing to fall. When house prices adjusted for inflation continue to go down. Although house prices adjusted for take-home pay are still going up. Ramble and Root asks, do you think everyone is hanging on to see what happens in the November's budget? Not everybody, no. And a lot of people don't need to, like first-time buyers or people selling first-time buyer properties. Don't wait, no need to wait. A lot of other people, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes, that's what's happening. Especially at the higher end of the market. Bosbos says, the general public has been gaslit more times than a combi boiler by this Labour government. I agree. I mean, all governments gaslight us to an extent, but this government's off the scale. 2JZMR2 on YouTube says, will the new budget come in immediately or delayed to April if there are tax implications or stamp duty changes? I don't know, but typically they bring them in at the April, the start of the new tax year. But this budget, I don't know if they want to wait for stuff like that. You know, if they're going to make a change to stamp duty that's permanent, there's no need for them to delay it. They could do it overnight. But because they've also got to, and it would make sense, it would be intelligent of them to scrap stamp duty for all home purchases, not just those below £500,000. Because there are downsizers who want to downsize from an 800 grand place to a 600 grand place, but they won't because of stamp duty. So it's preventing those people from freeing up that property at the top end of the market, which would really just free up the whole thing. Fucking hell. Real terms. I did correct myself, kicking Mustang. I did correct myself and say adjusted for inflation, but in wage, didn't I? And yes, kicking Mustang, who repeatedly batters me over the head with a frying pan or a paintball. Real prices, as you know, are a misnomer. Real wages versus house prices is what matters. House prices are inversely related to consumer prices. Interesting. Thank you. Okay. John Snow says, a mate just bagged a 320k bungalow for 270k. And Paul replied, you mean he just bagged a 270k bungalow for 270k? You're absolutely right, Paul. But I think what John Snow is saying is that the asking price is 50 grand higher. So 50 grand. So that's that's, what is that? 18%. Am I doing my maths right? It's late. I'm tired. I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Yes, AM. So, guys, please understand this. Stamp duty holidays, or in other words, temporary suspensions of stamp duty, do cause prices to go up. That is true. But a permanent one doesn't create that rush effect of people trying to beat the deadline. And it's the rush effect that causes prices to go up. Oh no, I just poured tea all over my desk. Have a look. Yeah, there's tea all over my desk. Ah. Right, guys. I should just call it a knock on the head there, shouldn't I? I do have a lot of new followers every week, loads and loads of new followers. And so for those of you who are regulars, you're going to have heard all this before. But if you are new here, in the description below is a link to my link tree. And on my link tree is a long menu of all the different ways in which you can find free help, free content, playlists. You can book calls with me, one-to-one consultations with me if you want someone as a sounding board on your move. You can order your property search pack through me. You can get a conveyancer through me and mortgage brokers through me. It's all there. It's all there to help. And all the partners I work with are handpicked by me personally because I trust them. And the whole idea is to help you be in control of your move. So, and last thing, very, very last thing. It's 5 Fact Friday tomorrow. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, my newsletter goes out. And I've been getting good feedback from you guys. A lot of you joining the mailing list for the newsletter because of my thought of the week. And my thought of the week only goes in the email newsletter. It's where I sometimes divulge more of my feelings that I'm happier to divulge in a newsletter to my subscribers rather than putting it out publicly on social media. That's my thought of the week. And it's a raw brain dump. Just see the tea soaking into my... It's just a nightmare. Did you hear that? Pretty much sums up my day. But yeah, if you want to get my newsletter, Thank you. It's growing at a really rapid rate, my newsletter sign up. So it's 5 Fact Friday. It's the 5 Fact Friday newsletter. It comes out at 8 o'clock in the morning. Tomorrow morning, the 5 Fact Friday video is also 8 o'clock. Sometimes the video comes out later. The newsletter comes at 8 o'clock no matter what. So you get it first if you're a newsletter subscriber. It has the 5 biggest facts of the week insofar as the housing market is concerned, verifiable stuff, plus links to stuff you might have missed during the week and my thought of the week. And you can reply to the newsletter and I will see your replies. I cannot reply to them all myself. Unfortunately, there are too many. And to those of you, if any of you are watching this on TikTok, you'll be watching it when I've uploaded the recorded version of this on TikTok, because I cannot live stream simultaneously on TikTok like I can on all the other platforms. So you guys are watching on YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then TikTok. I have to upload it separately. And there's an audio podcast as well for new followers. In the link tree, you'll find the links to the audio podcast. But all of these live streams get uploaded onto audio podcast on Apple and Spotify within minutes, usually, or an hour or so after the end of these live streams. But I hope you'll. I'm just going to go now. I'm just going to stop. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Duncan. Duncan C, Nick Jones, John Smith, Ramble and Root, Amber Headley, Jack May. Yeah, I have done a separate phone for TikTok, but then they don't let you. Once you do a live stream on TikTok, it's not available to view afterwards. So, yeah, we'll work on it. We'll work on it. Have a good one, guys, and I'll see you on 5 Fact Friday. Bye bye.